5:30 in the morning. A lime green Lamborghini flying down a quiet street in Miramar, Florida. A white car pulls up right beside it. Gunfire. Seconds later, that Lamborghini is wrapped around a stranger's house, 3 people inside, all of them shot. One of them won't make it. And as of right now, days later, nobody knows who pulled the trigger. Welcome back to Case Watch. Before we get into this, hit subscribe and tap that bell, because we're following this one as it unfolds. Let's get into it. Let's start with where this happened. Miramar is a city in Broward County, Florida, sitting between Fort Lauderdale and Miami, home to a couple 100,000 people. It's mostly known as a quiet, residential, family-oriented suburb, the kind of place with tree-lined streets, gated communities, and a lot of families who've lived there for years. Neighbors know each other. It's not a place used to waking up to gunfire. That matters here, because it's part of why this case shook the community as hard as it did. When something this violent happens in a neighborhood built around quiet mornings and familiar faces, it doesn't just scare people, it makes them question how safe their own street actually is. The victim was Brianna Johnson, 21 years old, known online as Dreamdoll Bri, It Girl Bri, and by some fans as Broward Barbie. She'd built a following of close to 400,000 on TikTok and around 85,000 on Instagram, numbers that put her firmly in the category of a genuine rising influencer, not just a local personality. Her breakout moment came from a song called Bend Over, which turned into a viral TikTok sound and eventually its own dance challenge, the kind of moment almost every creator dreams of, but very few actually get. Beyond that one song, she'd started branching into other music releases too, clearly trying to build something more lasting than a single viral clip. She was building a real presence in the South Florida entertainment scene, lifestyle content, fashion, luxury cars, the whole influencer package that draws in a young, engaged audience. Family posts mention she had a child. Reports also describe a boyfriend, a fellow creator she'd reportedly gone viral with on that same Bend Over track, who publicly mourned her after her death. In an industry where so much of the content is curated and polished, the tributes that came in afterward painted a picture of someone who was, by all accounts, warm and full of energy in real life too, not just online. Now let's walk through the night this happened, because the timeline here matters a lot for understanding what investigators are actually working with. Brianna had been at an Airbnb party with a group of people, including 2 men who stayed with her for the rest of the night. Parties like this, in short-term rental homes, have become a fixture of the South Florida nightlife scene, and it's often difficult for police to reconstruct exactly who was where and when, since guest lists aren't formal and people come and go all night. One additional detail worth mentioning, though it comes from a single unverified source, is that her hairstylist was reportedly in the car with them earlier in the night as well, but got out before the shooting happened, allegedly after some kind of disagreement with Brianna. That has not been confirmed by police, so I want to be upfront about that distinction. It's the kind of detail that spreads fast on social media because it sounds significant, but until investigators confirm it, it stays in the category of rumor, not fact. After the party, the group stopped at a Shell gas station. A fight broke out there. It's still unconfirmed whether that altercation is connected to what happened next, but it's one of the threads investigators are looking at closely, since gas stations are usually covered by surveillance cameras, both the station's own system and often nearby businesses, which gives police a real chance at pulling footage of who was involved and whether any of those people resurface later in the timeline. From there, Brianna and the 2 men got into her lime green Lamborghini Urus and started driving west, heading toward Sunshine Boulevard. It was around 5:30 in the morning, that strange window of night where the streets are almost completely empty, but not quite late enough that most people are still fully asleep. As they approached the intersection near Southwest 27th Court, a white sedan, possibly an older model BMW, pulled up right alongside the driver's side. And then, someone in that car opened fire. Police say ShotSpotter, a network of acoustic sensors placed around the city that detects the sound of gunfire and instantly alerts police to the general location, picked up the shots as rapid fire, meaning multiple rounds went off in quick succession rather than a single shot. That detail alone tells investigators something important, that whoever was shooting wasn't firing a single warning shot or reacting in a panic, but unloading multiple rounds directly at the vehicle. Multiple rounds struck the SUV, hitting all 3 people inside. The wounded driver lost control. The vehicle blew through a stop sign and crashed into a nearby home about a block away from where the shots were fired. Nobody inside that house was hurt, which, given how much damage a vehicle crash like that can cause, was its own small piece of luck in an otherwise devastating night. A Ring doorbell camera on a nearby property caught part of the moment, and that footage spread everywhere online within hours, giving the public a rare, immediate, and unfiltered look at the immediate aftermath of a shooting most people would otherwise only read about. All 3 victims were rushed to Memorial Regional Hospital in critical condition. Brianna didn't survive her injuries. As for the 2 men, the official police statement is that they lived, though a couple of unofficial reports floating around online claimed one of them also died. That specific claim conflicts with the official statement and hasn't been confirmed anywhere solid, so take it with real caution. Now let's hear directly from the people who were there that morning, because their reactions give a real sense of just how shocking this was for a neighborhood that isn't used to this kind of violence. One resident, Cherry Chair, said their mother actually heard the gunfire and at first thought it was fireworks going off, since this all happened right around the 4th of July weekend. That's an understandable mistake, honestly. Fireworks and gunfire can sound remarkably similar from a distance, especially in the early morning hours right after a major holiday, when random pops and bangs from late-night celebrations aren't unusual. It was only after realizing how rapid and close the sound was that she understood something was wrong, that this wasn't some neighbor setting off leftover fireworks, but something far more serious happening just outside. Another neighbor, Carlos Reguero, who lives right on that block of Sunshine Boulevard, told reporters that he and his family heard what sounded like gunshots around 5 or 6 in the morning. He also said something that stuck with a lot of people covering this story, that if the shooter was from that area, there's a real chance he'd know them personally, because that's how tight-knit that neighborhood is. Think about what that actually means for a second. This isn't someone describing a dangerous, anonymous part of the city where violence might be expected. This is someone saying, essentially, if this came from around here, I probably know this person's face, maybe even their name. That's a genuinely unsettling thought for anyone living on that street. Another resident summed up the mood simply, saying they'd never experienced anything like this before, and that in that neighborhood, pretty much everybody knows everybody. That kind of statement, repeated by more than one person in the area, tells you a lot about the atmosphere in Miramar following this shooting. It wasn't just grief for a stranger who happened to die nearby. It was the unsettling realization that violence like this can reach even the quietest, most familiar streets, and that the sense of safety people had taken for granted got shattered in the span of about 30 seconds of gunfire. Now let's get into what police have said directly, because their statements are really the only confirmed, on-record account we have of what officially happened and what's still unknown. Miramar Police Chief Delriush Moss has been the main voice on this investigation, and he's been fairly candid in his statements, more so than a lot of departments tend to be this early into an active case. He described the ShotSpotter data as picking up, quote, rapid fire, and he called the whole thing a chaotic scene. He said, in his own words, that this is no way to wake up on a Sunday morning, and that hearing multiple shots in the middle of the night is always disturbing, no matter how many times you've responded to a scene like this. That last part is worth sitting with for a second. This is a police chief, someone whose entire career involves responding to violent scenes, admitting that this particular one still disturbed him. That's not a small thing to say publicly. When asked directly why this particular car was hit, he said, quote, "Certainly they targeted this particular car for some reason. We're trying to figure out why." That's about as much certainty as police have publicly committed to at this stage. No suspect. No named motive. Just confirmation that this wasn't random, that somebody made a deliberate choice to pull up next to that specific Lamborghini and open fire, rather than this being some random act of violence that happened to catch them in the crossfire. Here's where the investigation stands right now. No arrests have been made. Police are looking for that white sedan, last seen heading south, described in radio traffic as an older four-door model, possibly dark-tinted, possibly white or even a dark pink tone, which tells you investigators are still working with some uncertainty, even on basic descriptive details like the exact color of the vehicle they're hunting for. That's not unusual in early-stage shootings like this, especially ones that happen in low-light conditions right before sunrise, where witnesses and even sensor data can only tell you so much. Broward County Crime Stoppers is offering up to $5,000 for information, reachable at 954-493, tips, and callers can stay anonymous. Rewards like this are a pretty standard tool in cases where police believe someone out there has information but might be hesitant to come forward, whether out of fear of retaliation or simply not wanting to get involved. The anonymity piece matters a lot here because in a case like this, where the shooter is still unidentified and clearly willing to open fire in a residential area, anyone with information might reasonably be nervous about what happens if their name gets attached to a tip. What's notable here is what's absent from the official statements. There's no mention of a confirmed motive, no mention of a named person of interest, no confirmation, one way or another, about whether the earlier gas station altercation is connected. Police appear to still be in the early evidence-gathering phase, likely working through ballistics analysis on the recovered shell casings and bullet fragments, reviewing any additional camera footage from businesses and residences in the area beyond just that one Ring doorbell clip, and trying to identify and interview anyone who might have witnessed the white sedan either before or after the shooting. That's the reality of a lot of these cases in the first several days. The dramatic parts, the ShotSpotter alert, the crash into the house, the doorbell footage, all happen and become public almost immediately. But the actual investigative work, matching evidence, tracking a vehicle, building a case that will hold up, takes far longer and often produces no visible public update for days or even weeks at a time. Now let's talk about how this spread online, because the reaction on social media became almost its own second story, running alongside the actual investigation. Within hours, Brianna's death was everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, X. One post sharing news of the shooting pulled in over 700,000 views in a matter of hours, which gives you a sense of just how fast this traveled beyond her own follower base and into the wider internet. Bigger accounts, including the Shade Room, picked the story up and pushed it out to an even wider audience, the kind of amplification that turns a local tragedy into a story people across the country are suddenly aware of and reacting to. Comments poured in from fans who clearly felt like they'd lost someone they knew personally, even if they'd never met her, which is honestly one of the strange, very modern parts of influencer culture. People build real parasocial connections with creators through years of watching their content, and when something like this happens, that grief is genuine, even if it comes from someone who only knew her through a phone screen. One fan wrote, quote, "Broward is lost for words. Bri, I'm so sorry, get your rest, baby girl, you did not deserve that at all." Another simply wrote that they were sick to their stomach, that she was too young and too beautiful for this to happen to her. Other comments took a more resigned, almost exhausted tone, people saying things like, "This is why you don't need to be at every function," or, "This definitely sounds like a targeted hit." That range of reactions, grief, disbelief, and a kind of weary resignation, tells you a lot about how normalized this kind of violence has unfortunately become in certain online conversations. A lot of the reaction wasn't just grief for Brianna specifically. It folded into a bigger, angrier conversation online about gun violence and how often it's claiming the lives of young Black creators and entertainers in South Florida specifically. That anger showed up again and again in the comments, alongside just straightforward mourning, turning her death into a flashpoint for a much larger, ongoing conversation people have clearly been having for a while. Now let's talk about the fallout inside her own circle, because that's become its own layer of this story, separate from both the investigation and the broader online reaction. A GoFundMe was set up by Brianna's loved ones to help cover funeral and memorial costs, describing the loss as unimaginable and asking for prayers and support from anyone willing to give. That's a common, practical reality that often gets overlooked in stories like this, that beyond the grief and the headlines, families are also suddenly facing the very real, very immediate cost of burying someone. But alongside the grief, there's been real tension. A person identifying themselves as Brianna's cousin, posting under the account Dolly26, has been publicly and repeatedly confronting the hairstylist, who was reportedly in the car earlier that night, saying her account of events doesn't add up. The cousin has posted things like, "Somebody's got to tell me something straight up. There's so many pieces missing to this puzzle," making clear they're not planning to let it go quietly. The hairstylist, for her part, has denied any involvement, canceled her work appointments for the week, and posted her own tributes to Brianna instead of responding directly to the accusations being thrown her way. I want to be really clear here, none of this back and forth has been confirmed by investigators as connected to the actual shooting. It's family speculation and public tension playing out online, not evidence, and it wouldn't be responsible of me to present it as anything more than that, especially since this is a private person who hasn't been charged with anything. Grief can push people to search for answers anywhere they can find them, sometimes fairly, sometimes not, And it's worth remembering that public accusations circulating online aren't the same thing as facts established by an actual investigation. So that's where this case sits right now. Open. Unsolved. A young woman gone at 21. A neighborhood that heard the gunfire and, for a moment, mistook it for fireworks. A police department with a clear sense that this was deliberate, but no name attached to who did it. A cousin publicly demanding answers. A hairstylist denying any involvement while mourning in public herself. And a community online split between raw grief and mounting frustration over a pattern of violence that keeps repeating, city after city, creator after creator. Here's what I want you to sit with. How does a car get so deliberately targeted in the middle of the night, right after what may have just been a random gas station argument, and nobody's been able to explain why? And when neighbors say they might personally know the shooter if he's from the area, what does that tell you about how close violence like this actually sits to the people living right next to it, not some far-off danger, but potentially someone's own neighbor? If anything breaks on this one, an arrest, new evidence, anything solid, I'll bring it straight to you first. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed to Case Watch with that bell turned on so you don't miss it. We'll see you in the next one.